Hey everyone, hope you haven't been naughty because today on the show we're going to be talking about Silent Night, Deadly Night. Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema Trip Reviews. I am Wyatt, and today on the show we're going to be talking about 1984's Silent Night, Deadly Night. Now, this movie is directed by Charles Sellier. If you don't know that name, I wouldn't be surprised, because he hasn't really directed too much. He has directed Annihilators and Snowballing. I have not heard of either one of those movies. After this movie, he really went through a hard time trying to find some work, because for those who don't know, this movie at the time of release was very, very controversial. It was going to be released in theaters pretty much throughout the country, and as soon as parents saw the trailers and promotional and marketing, because this movie has one of the coolest fucking posters around. Check out this poster. It's such an awesome poster with great artwork, and as soon as parents saw this, the marketing and trailer and everything for it, and they saw that a killer Santa is going to be roaming around killing teenagers and whatnot, they immediately threw a fit. They actually went to the theaters and were picketing. You could see pictures of parents and even little children holding signs saying, "Save Christmas, save Santa," like Santa's not evil, stuff like that. Parents had a field day, and it actually worked in the long run. They ended up getting the movie pulled from a bunch of different theaters. It went on a limited theatrical run, and this movie really didn't hit as far as popularity and didn't really grow a huge fan base until years later upon like a re-release, and especially now it's a cult classic among horror fans and just general Christmas movie aficionados, I guess. Now, believe it or not, this is my first time seeing this movie. I have never seen it. I have heard many things about it. I have seen certain scenes from the movie. I know a little bit about the sequels, especially the second one with the famous Garbage Day.
Garbage Day! Huh? No!
But there's like 5 sequels or 6 sequels. I've only seen now this first one. From what I understand, the second one, they do retell a lot of this first one in the movie. So I guess you can only really you don't only have to see the second half for the second one, from what I understand. Maybe I will go back and rewatch those and do a reviews of those at another time. But today we are just talking about the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. This movie does star Robert Brian Wilson, not Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. No, we're talking about Robert Brian Wilson, who plays Billy in the movie, the main character of the film. You also have famous 80s starlet Linnea Quigley in this movie. She was in a ton of different 80s movies, but you get to see her for a little bit in this movie as well. Just a little bit about the movie, the behind the scenes type stuff. This movie was initially going to be called Sleigh Ride. You get it? Not Sleigh. No, it's Slay. You get it? Sleigh Ride. Now, the kill scenes of the movie, because they're a pretty decent amount of kills in this movie, they were originally directed by the editor Michael Spence, because the actual director of the movie was too uncomfortable filming some of the scenes for it, which is something you don't really hear very often, about having a director have to get somebody else to shoot the scenes because they're too uncomfortable filming them. Then, like, why would you choose to direct this movie? It doesn't make much sense to me at that point. Like, why would you direct a movie if you're too uncomfortable directing some of the subject matter? Now, I did mention about the protests of the movie, and about after the movie release and everything, the director had such a hard time finding work after that because of the reception of the movie and the backlash and the protests and everything surrounding it. It kind of muddled up his career a little bit. He went on to he did a bunch of TV work, from what I understand, but not too many movies at all. The last little bit of interesting facts about the movie: apparently one of the many directors that were in line for this movie was Sam Raimi, and boy, oh boy, if I can go back and try to convince someone to direct a movie, I would try to convince them to let Sam Raimi direct a Silent Night, Deadly Night, because I would love to see Sam Raimi's interpretation of this movie. I would just imagine ridiculous amounts of gore, those ridiculous Sam Raimi camera angles, like the quick snap zooms and the weird like tilted camera angles. I would just imagine Evil Dead mixed with Christmas in a way, just without the demons. You would just have a brutal, killer Santa. And I'm sure Sam Raimi would do very well with some of like the kind of the darker material in like the first half of the movie and kind of make it his own. But man, a Sam Raimi directed Silent Night and Deadly Night, I didn't know I needed this until I read the fact after watching the movie, and I would 100% rather see that one than this. But that doesn't mean this movie was bad by any means. This was my first time seeing it, and I actually really enjoyed it. This movie was a very brisk, like 126 minutes, just under an hour and a half, a normal runtime. But it seemed a little shorter than that because this movie, I feel like it's very well paced through the whole thing. I didn't really feel bored at any time. I wasn't like reaching for my phone. I was down for the ride that they were taking me on because I was not expecting this. I was, going into it, I was just expecting another typical 80s slasher, just a dude dressed up as Santa Claus going around hacking up teenagers. You know how it is, especially with like the 80s slasher era. It was just so oversaturated with a ton of just gory slasher films. I expected that out of this movie. But you really, in the first half of this movie, you really get a deep kind of character study of Billy, man. And you get to really see what the effects of trauma on a kid has throughout his life. And I really wish they would have kind of dove into that through the whole film, because once you hit around that halfway point when he's in the suit and he starts going on the killing spree, that's really when it turns into that typical 80s slasher movie like I mentioned. But I really wish they would have continued some of that stuff from the first half, because that first half is I really enjoyed it, what direction they were going with, because it was very different. It was actually giving a lot of depth to the movie. For those who don't know, this movie, it starts out on Christmas Eve in 1971. Billy is only maybe 5 or 6 years old or something. He's in the backseat of his car. He has a little baby brother in there, and his parents are driving. They're going to hang out. They're going to visit his grandfather. And his grandfather, I guess he can't really see well. He can't hear. He's just kind of in a catatonic state. And when the parents leave, they leave Billy alone with the grandfather, and the grandfather just kind of snaps out of it. And I guess he was faking this whole time. He starts telling Billy that terrible things happen on Christmas Eve, and if you're naughty, Santa's gonna punish you, so you have to be good all year long, or you're gonna be punished, because little naughty people deserve to be punished. Naughty kids deserve to be punished.
You see Santa Claus tonight? You better run, boy. You better run for your life.
It's wild because the chain of events that goes from here. They leave, and as they're leaving, you cut to a guy in a Santa suit robbing a convenience store and just shooting the cashier. And it's not really done in a comedic way at all. The first half of this movie is very dark. It's not like a very campy 80s tone like you would expect out of this. At least to me, it wasn't. But after the Santa guy kills the cashier, the family's driving and they see this dude broke down on the side of the road, and he wastes no time. They even ask him "Oh, you broke down?" He's like, "Yeah, not exactly." And he straight up just blasts the parents, and Billy's crying. He jumps out of the car and runs and hides in the bushes, and he just watches his family get killed, except for his little baby brother. But he watches his family get butchered. Cut to a couple years later, he's in an orphanage. He's being taken care of by Mother Superior and these nuns at St. Mary's Orphanage. And there is a good nun that's really actually concerned about his well-being, telling Mother Superior, this kid needs help. Maybe we should probably send him away and get him some psychiatric help, because every year around this time, he just goes a little nuts. He just loses it. There's something wrong with him every time. They have problems with him around this time of year, every single year. They catch him making obscene, gory drawings, stuff like that. And I mean, he goes and peeps on his couple fucking in this other room, and then the nun catches them and starts beating their ass with a belt. This nun, man, she goes crazy. This nun is just nuts, man. And I wish they would have got the nun from the Blues Brothers, because I could just picture that nun from the Blues Brothers just running around smacking motherfuckers with a ruler. Would have been hilarious in this movie. You go from such a dark scene, man, and because I just glanced over it for story reasons, but that scene with his parents getting killed by this Santa, It is so dark. It's kind of uncomfortable to a point. It's not a typical 80s cheese fest or anything at all. It's very dark. At least to me, I got the impression just while watching it. Like, it made me a little, a little unnerved, a little uncomfortable, like how dark that scene was, and how far they went with it. But you go to just another different kind of abuse and another different kind of trauma with this nun who's kind of just, trying to make him well by punishing him in certain ways, because the nun reflects the same message that the grandfather did earlier, is that naughty children deserve to be punished. They have to be punished. And this is just being just beat into this kid's brain over and over and over. And this is a kid that's already, just traumatized. Like, I don't know how a kid can go watch his parents getting killed and how you're going to overcome that. And you just add more trauma on top of that. I mean, the nuns, beats him with a belt. They tie him to the bed so he can't get up during the middle of the night. They make him sit on Santa's lap, and he fucking punches this Santa straight in the face. Santa's pissed. What the fuck is his problem?
What the hell's wrong with that kid?
But and just even that scene when he just runs upstairs and he realizes what he's done, he's so scared of that nun and he's hiding in the corner, man. And, it's so sad. I mean, it's such, even though you're getting it out of a horror movie where it does turn in that 80s, schlock fest later on, this is very serious subject matter, and they took it in a very serious way. I mean, this is some heavy shit in this movie in the first half, and that's where you cut to like present day kind of with Billy. He's grown up. He's a huge, good-looking, strapping young man, and they get him a job at a toy store, and that's really where things start to go from there. In like the last hour of the movie is they make him, someone breaks their foot. They can't, they don't have anybody to play Santa. They get Billy to dress up as Santa for the day. This dude is no way fit to wear this Santa suit, and they put him straight into it. He's having very awkward conversations and situations with these children that sit on his lap, like telling him, you better be good. You better not be naughty or Santa will punish you. Like, dude, chill. And like the parents can't hear what they're saying to him. Like, oh, he's so good with children. They're so well behaved. After they close, they have like a huge Christmas party. And, Billy, he's just not right. And you could see on his face this whole time he's not right. And the chick that, the register girl that he kind of has a crush on, he was having impure thoughts about and impure dreams about. He was having dreams of them, he was having dreams of them fucking, and then he gets murdered by a Santa Claus. He just like rips up his whole side and stabs him through the side and in the gut. Some of the kills in this are brutal and very well done, especially for a low-budget movie like this in the 80s. But you have what I can only best describe as, short, tiny William Shatner lookalike dude that works there at the store. Pervert William Shatner is trying to rape, register girl, and Billy fucking loses it and somehow gets superpowers, and he's strong enough to pick this dude up by one hand and strangle him with these Christmas lights. And, she loses it because he just killed somebody in front of her and calls him crazy and smacks him, so he kills her. And then from there on out, he just goes on this fucking killing spree. He even gets like the classic, like you see in the posters and stuff, him running around with the axe. You get one of the coolest kills, one of the most well-known kills in the movie with Linnea Quigley, where of course she's running around topless, and he picks her up and sticks her on the mounted deer head on the wall. Definitely one of the most creative kills in the movie. I don't know why her and her boyfriend were deciding to do it on a pool table. That is probably the most uncomfortable surface that you could have done it on. I feel like if the floor was carpet, you would have been better off doing it there, or even like on a couch or something. But man, a pool table, one of the hardest surfaces, like why are you going, that is so uncomfortable. And while he's going on this killing spree, you are maybe twice, 3 times, you cut back to the good nun that was very concerned about him. And she's even the one that got him the job at the toy store. But she's the one that was, since he was a kid, insisted on trying to get him some help. But the, Mother Superior, she had her own way of helping children, and it was foolproof from what she was saying. But this lady is still trying to care for him. And throughout the movie, she calls, and she's the one that finds out over the phone, like they put Billy in the Santa suit, and she immediately all right, that's just, asking for trouble. So she decides to go down to the store, and by the time she gets there, it's too late. Everyone's fucking dead and butchered. She goes to the police, and they can only assume that he's going to be on his way back to the orphanage to, you know, kill naughty people. And who's the naughtiest of them all is Mother Superior for tormenting these children, these orphans who all over these years. And probably one of the funniest scenes in the movie, because you know exactly what's gonna happen, is the cop pulling up and seeing just the Santa walking towards the children outside of the orphanage. And immediately when you see him get out of the car with the gun and everything, you're like, all right, there's no way this is fucking Billy. And it's not. He just guns down this dude. And I guess it was like a pastor or a priest that would visit and always dress up as Santa at the orphanage every year. And they said that he was like deaf, so he wouldn't have been able to hear him. So, I mean, it was just asking for trouble from the start. This cop just guns this dude down in cold blood. The child that's sitting there is so shocked, just, you killed Santa. But all this dude really does, he gets a stern talking to by Mother Superior, saying that she's disappointed in him. Like, this dude doesn't really get reprimanded at all. Other than Billy fucking killing him at one point. And this is a nitpick of mine. That scene with the cop where he's investigating around the orphanage goes on way, way too fucking long, dude. He's walking around the outside. He sees like the little door to go to the basement. He goes and checks the basement out. And then as he's coming up, Billy gives him the whack in the chest with the axe and he goes down the stairs. But that little sequence where he's just kind of inspecting the orphanage goes on way too long, and especially in a movie that was already cut down. This is just to pad out the time, I'm pretty sure. But man, it's at that point I was like, come on, we pick up the pace. We get it. He's looking for Billy. He's gonna show up and kill you at some point. Billy kills the cop. He goes up to the door, and one of the children, like, oh, Santa's here, and he goes and opens up the door for him. And just when Billy's about to, pull up the axe and bring it down on Mother Superior to end her once and for all, the good nun and the cop come in and blast them away. And what better way to set up the sequel than to have the axe fall on the ground pointing exactly at his little brother, and his little brother looks at it and says, naughty. That's exactly what you get in the sequel, from what I understand, is his little brother grows up and even wears like the same Santa suit to go on his killing rampage. But that's like pretty much the gist of the movie. Overall, I really enjoyed it. This was... I think I definitely got more than what I expected, especially out of that first half, man. I wasn't expecting it to be as heavy as it was. And, as far as content with, the murder of his family and all the, traumatizing shit he goes through at that orphanage, I really wish they would have went into the character study of Billy more throughout the movie itself, other than just turning into, the regular typical 80s slasher. Because I feel like I think it was the director or someone that was involved with the movie. I read an interview where they're saying that, like, upon release, that everybody really assumed just by the trailers and the movie, and that's why they had protesters, they just assumed that it was just a dude dressed up as Santa going around hacking and slashing, typical shit. But there was really a lot of depth to this movie. If you really look at it and the process and really going into how trauma...
It's a movie about trauma.
...and everything can affect someone at that age and how it grows to affect them over the course of their life, and kind of, not explains, but kind of gives you an idea of how these monsters are created in history. Serial killers or whatnot. And it's interesting. And it's interesting when you look at it in a movie like this, whereas with Rob Zombie's Halloween, I always hate on this movie, especially the second one. But with Rob Zombie's Halloween, where some people will like that part of the movie, I don't think it works with that, because you already had these established characters and lore with Michael Myers and everybody else. I don't think it works because we already knew who these characters were. We already knew what Michael Myers was so supposed to be. You don't need a backstory, because he's less scary with a backstory. He's more scary if you don't know who he is at all. He's just a boogeyman. Whereas this, with Billy, I think it helps to know his past history and his past trauma. Oh my God, we're going into the Jamie Lee Curtis territory. Trauma.
It was a movie about trauma.
But dealing with his past trauma.
Trauma.
He it evolves as he gets older, and just different things just trigger that PTSD and trigger him. Just the sign, even when he's working in that toy store, just the banner with Santa Claus on it, fucking sends a shiver down his spine. He's fucking, he's losing it there. So I can only imagine what it's like to actually wear the Santa suit and have to pretend to be Santa, somebody that you've grown to fear your whole life, and then he just fucking, he snaps and loses it. But it's just so fascinating, in like an earlier 80s movie like this, a slasher amongst all the other slashers around that time. This surprisingly had a lot of depth to it, and I really appreciated that. And I think that's really what makes this movie special and stand out all these years later. I think that's why a lot of people have really developed a love for this movie and, kind of consider it a Christmas classic as far as horror is concerned. And man, I mean, this is one I'm definitely going to have to come back to every now and then over the Christmas time, because I definitely really enjoyed this movie. Only complaint is, why didn't we have him doing Santa Claus things? Like, you have him on the poster coming out of the chimney with the axe. Man, we should have had something like that in the movie, man. We should have had him going down through chimneys, or, pretending to be a Santa Claus going into these houses and murdering people. And the other one thing I wanted to mention is another hilarious part of the movie is the cops know they're looking for a dude dressed as Santa Claus, and they see a Santa climbing up a ladder into somebody's window in this house. And you think it's Billy, but when they bust in and everything, the cops are ready to fucking open fire on this dude, and it's just the dad trying to, surprise his child. But man, what if they would have opened fire on this dude and killed 2 innocent people dressed up as Santa in this movie? Like, man, that would have been crazy and hilarious at the same time. But overall, man, I really enjoyed this movie. I'm definitely going to have to go check out at least the second one. I do know that these movies drop off a cliff significantly. I know that they get pretty fucking horrible going throughout the series. But I feel like, especially with liking this first one as much as I did, I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. I kind of I feel like I would do a disservice to myself and to you folks if I didn't go and watch the sequels and kind of let you know how it goes. I really like the character of Billy. Other than the couple nuns, I wish we would have got more character development and gotten to know some main characters in the movie. I feel like his little crush on the register girl, I feel like they could have done more with that, given her more of a character, so her death and everything that happens with her gives more of an impact, because pretty much you don't really know much of these characters whenever they're getting killed, so you don't really care about them when they die. The only real character you really know through this movie is Billy. I mean, even the nuns, you hate Mother Superior because how, her ways of helping kids are, but the other nun, she tries, she's the good nun, she tries to help him, but there's really not much depth to her. Other than Billy, there's really not much depth to any of these characters. So I think with as short of this movie is, they definitely could have added more character development for some of these other characters to kind of give it more emotion, give it more impact to some of these deaths and what is happening throughout the film. I think that would have definitely made it better in the long run. And maybe that's something we maybe would have gotten with a Sam Raimi or something. Who knows? But I mean, at the time in 1984, you got pretty much everything all in this movie. I mean, you got substance, you got a good story, you got cool kills, good gore, you got some nudity in there, you got some boobies running around with Linnea Quigley. If she's in a movie, you're going to probably see some nudity. But you really get pretty much everything you expect out of a good slasher in this movie and a good horror movie. It just kind of, I wouldn't say falls flat at the end, but they just definitely didn't, do enough with what they set up in the first half as far as the story and the depth of the character of Billy itself. It definitely turns into that, typical slasher. And I wish they would have, dove more into his character and his psyche throughout the back half. For those who are fans of the movie, definitely leave some comments. Let me know what you liked about it. If you didn't like this movie, I would love to hear what you didn't like about it as well. And I would really like to know what your opinions are about the rest of the movies in the series as well. That way I kind of know what to expect going into them. So definitely some comments there. And as always, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to go follow us on Twitter at CinemaTripViews, on Instagram at CinemaTripReviews, and also go check us out wherever you get your podcasts. We're pretty much available anywhere podcasts are found. So drop in and leave us a good review, and we'll see everybody next week.